So pre-approval, get your finances approved for the reasons I've said, takes the stress out of it, increases your negotiating power. Okay, make sure you put a subject to finance clause in. If you don't get pre-approved, put a subject to finance clause in. If you get pre-approved, make sure you put a subject to valuation clause in. If you're pre-approved, you are conditionally approved. The bank has said we'll lend you this amount of money, but they haven't necessarily said they'll lend you this amount of money on that property. So you're pre-approved, find the property, say to the agent, I'd like to buy this property, I am pre-approved, but I put a subject to valuation clause in there, which is I'll buy it provided the lender says that it's worth what you're trying to sell it to me for. So if you're not pre-approved, subject to finance. If you are pre-approved, subject to valuation. Make sure you get covered. Okay? Unlike me. Yes. I did perspire for a few days, let me tell you. Good mortgage broker though. No, there was. Okay. A few more slides just to finish up with. Auctions. Okay, anybody maybe considering buying properties at auction? No? Did you buy yours at auction? Yeah. One auction, one private sale. Oh, okay, all right. So in terms of auctions, first thing to be aware of is that you can't put a subject to finance clause in when you buy a property at auction. So if you buy a property at auction, I'm going to pay you whatever it is that the auctioneer has asked or you've said that you'll pay for, you'll be expected to provide that money. You cannot put a subject to finance clause in. So I would then strongly urge you, if you are looking to buy properties at auction, to get pre-approved. Because at least, again, you know that the bank will lend you that money. You still don't know at auction whether the bank will lend you that money on that property. They still need to come in and value that property. So that's a risk that you take. They may not value it at what you've paid for it, and you'd need to make up the shortfall. Now, generally they will do. Generally they will. And there are ways to mitigate, to reduce that scenarios occurring. Okay? But be aware of the fact that at auction you cannot buy a property subject to finance. Okay? Now, cooling off period. Cooling off periods do not apply to auctions either, but they do to other private sales. So any sale that you don't buy at auction, private sales, there is a cooling off period. Buy the property on Saturday, very excited, go to sleep, wake up on Monday morning, cold sweat, oh my goodness, what have I done? Okay? Cooling off period. You'll be glad to know that here in Victoria you've got, no, that's 3, isn't it? 3 days to actually go back to the agent selling the property and say, actually, I've made a big mistake. You may lose a bit of your deposit, so don't just do it willy-nilly. You might lose some of your deposit by doing so. And there are, like there is on that form I gave you, there are caveats, okay? You can't, in all situations, do it. For example, if you were a real estate agent, they don't benefit from cooling off periods. If a real estate agent wants to buy a property for themselves, they don't benefit from this. So my advice would be speak to a solicitor, speak to a conveyancer if you are considering that you might ever need a cooling off period and find out whether it does apply to you. Is that okay? All right. So, as you can see, it is a little bit of a maze out there, isn't it? Okay, to try and work out how much can I borrow, can I service the loan, what type of loan, and so on and so forth. Lots of different things out there. Clearly, what do I do as a job? Mortgage broker. My advice to you would go to speak to a mortgage broker for assistance, because as I've said, you can go in and speak to the individual lenders, to find out if they'll lend you what you want and whether you can service it, but that can be quite arduous in terms of time. We can actually access Mortgage Choice, 27 different lenders, we can do all of that for you. Okay, but the question would be, in terms of the benefits, they can help you to determine the maximum amount you can borrow, okay? They can find a lender that you qualify with. I gave you the example of the lady who didn't qualify, but then we managed to find some lenders that did. We can find you a loan that best suits your needs. Like I said, we can actually access up to 400 loans, different mortgage brokers, different things, but we can actually access 400 loans for you. And we can guide you through the process. We don't get paid until such time as the loan settles, so it's in our interest to ensure that you fully understand what's going on and that the loan does get taken through to settlement, because if we don't, then obviously we don't get paid. The question then becomes, as I'm sure most of you might wonder, which is, well, which mortgage broker do I use? Surely the mortgage broker, if the mortgage broker gets paid by the lender, which generally they do, surely the mortgage broker is doing it for their benefits, not for mine. Okay? Which mortgage broker do I use? Well, there's a checklist here. If I can just ask you just to take one and pass them on. Take one and pass it on, please. Okay? And if you ever read down through that list, just a couple of things that you might want to ask the mortgage broker that you speak to try and ensure that that mortgage broker is working at least in mutual interest. Clearly they want to make sure that they get paid. There's No problems, I don't think, with that. I think it's fair enough. The guy's doing the work, they can get paid for it. But clearly, they want to make sure that they're working in your interests as well. So when you speak to your mortgage broker, ask them some of those questions there to make sure they're working in both of your interests. Okay? All right. You'll be glad to know that brings us to the end. So in summary, my advice to you would be this. If you're looking to go and buy property, first property or more, start by working out how much you can borrow. Make sure you can actually service the loan, and don't be put off if you speak to one and they say that you can't. There are other lenders out there. I'd strongly encourage you to get pre-approved. And I do genuinely believe in the services of the mortgage broker, but try and ensure that the mortgage broker has your interests at heart as well as their own. Thank you very much.